Hey brats, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to take a little time out and watch something. This is basically a virtual reality documentary. It did come out last year, so this was filmed long before a lot of the current events that are happening. It's called Traveling While Black, and I'm going to warn you right now, if this is something that you feel like is going to trigger you, something that you feel like isn't going to be valuable to you, or you're not going to want to hear or see, go ahead and stop this video now if that's something that you worry is going to be offensive or unnecessary for you. Don't feel like you need to continue watching this at all. I have no idea what to expect going into this. I've seen it's got 4 stars on its reviews, so they were very mixed. Some of them were saying that it was really good, it really showed how VR can give you empathy, and then others saying that it was just garbage, that it was divisive. So I'm going to be going into this with an open mind, but know that this definitely is a hot topic for a lot of people, and it could be very heavy. It could really affect you. The only things you'll find in the description of this is going to be some information about this, who made it, and then some links if you're wanting to try and help some of the causes that are happening in the country right now, if you want to donate to a charity. This is all, I don't know exactly how this is going to tie into what's going on now, but obviously what's going on with the protests. And then on top of that, with the tough year we've already had with this virus that's affecting all of us, I know it's been a really tough year for a lot of people. So let's get in, check this out, and see what this has to say. Seen some other Felix and Paul stuff. They do a really good job. I'm wondering if this whole thing's going to be in a theater. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping it moves you into VR environments and 360 videos. I'm glad I chose to sit down.
The Negro Motorist Green Book, first published in 1936, was a critical guide for African Americans traveling during the 40s, 50s, and early 60s. It was created by a Harlem postal worker, Victor Green, and his colleagues who gathered a listing of restaurants, bars, hotels, and private homes that welcome black travelers across the country. In a time where Americans started hitting the road, African Americans faced restrictions as they traveled.
Wow.
Although you could purchase a car, you couldn't get gas, stay in hotels, or eat in restaurants. Travel was difficult and dangerous.
It's crazy how not that long ago that
Ben's
really
Chili
is.
Bowl at 1213 U Street, Washington, D.C. was originally a silent movie theater called the Minnehaha. It was later featured in the Green Book as a pool hall. Since 1958, Ben's Chili Bowl has continued the legacy of the Green Book, providing a refuge for the whole community.
I was born in Washington, D.C. in 1939 in a segregated hospital.
Wow.
I lived in a segregated neighborhood, and I went to a segregated school. First, I didn't realize any difference because all the people around me looked like me, and I was comfortable with that until I realized that I was being discriminated against. We couldn't shop downtown at the major stores. You couldn't try on clothes. You couldn't try on hats because if you tried them on, they didn't want you to get grease on the hats. You know, we oil our hair. And our makeup is dark. And so they didn't want us to try on clothes because you might get makeup on the clothes. I remember being about 7, maybe 10 years old in Hecht's department store when a little girl called me a nigger and spat on me.
Oh my God.
And I couldn't retaliate. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. I was so angry inside, but I couldn't do anything about it because I knew that it would be blamed on me.
The Green Book was a guide for African Americans to travel safely, to find shelter, food, and gas in a time when these basic rights were not guaranteed. Washington, D.C. had more listings in the Green Book than any other city in this country.
Wow.
The 1213 U Street was listed in the Green Book, and that's why we're sitting here in Ben's Chili Bowl at 1213 U Street today. From the very day that we opened up to the current time, it's still a safe haven for people. And we invited the community in, and we started with the neighborhood young men that thought this was home for them. They always sat over there in that corner. It was always 8, 6, 8, 10 of them every evening from different walks of life in the community. When someone spilled something on the floor and their staff was busy, one of them took care of it, would go in the back, get them up. If we were running out of ice, I'd say, hey, Joe, go get some ice for me, kind of place. That was the beginning of the building of a relationship with this community. These young guys that found this to be home. As soon as they started to broadcast professional basketball, put the TV up for them to keep them here, so they wouldn't have to go see that game someplace else. We didn't have TVs in Ben's Chili Bowl, but that was for them. And that brought in that segment of our community. And then, of course, this being the strong, close-knit community that it was, when you came here for a chili dog, you ran into a friend.
Particularly in the early 50s, when we would leave Washington, D.C. on the train, we could sit anywhere on the train until you got to the Virginia line. And when you get to the Virginia line, you had to go to the last train on the back. And I remember being so frustrated because we could not eat on the highway. If the train stopped, we couldn't eat. We couldn't relieve ourselves on the train.
And this is 80 years ago they're talking about.
And then you're wet when the train stopped.
It's not that long ago.
And you would
That's
relieve
crazy.
yourself outside, almost like you would if you were a dog.
What the hell?
And that's the way, basically, I thought that white people felt about me as a black African-American or Negro woman or whatever, nigger woman or whatever, that they felt like I was not human, not a human being, that I was less than a human being. I see people treat their dogs better now. Right now, they treat the dogs better than they treated us as black Americans.
Well, you know, one of the things that I remember was traveling from Southwest Georgia down to Mississippi. And this was right after Miss Hamer had been beaten. I mean, they dragged her off the bus and beat her. And, you know, I mean, crippled her. And one of the things that I remembered on that bus, I felt that two things. First, I had to sit in the front of the bus, just like you. But second, I also was in my head saying, you know, what am I going to do if these people come on the bus and try to treat me like Miss Hamer? And one of the things I was very clear about is that I was not getting off the bus and going to any of these places to try to use the bathroom. I was not going to get off the bus to try to try to get anything to eat. I knew enough to pack a lunch before I got on that bus. Now, it was a 10-hour ride from Albany, Georgia, down to Jackson, Mississippi. But, I mean, it was, you know, it was really tough trying to not only deal with the question of where you're going to go to the bathroom, where you're going to go eat, but whether if you exercised your right under the law, whether somebody was going to come up there and try to assault you. That was a reality that we wanted to change. I mean, I remember I was maybe 14 years old when I started seeing the challenge, the real challenge in Montgomery with the bus boycott, with Rosa Parks. Just in terms of local transportation and interstate transportation, we had to face people telling us, you're not good as we are. And now, because of people who got on the bus and challenged, you know, the institutions that were developed, we now you can dream big. You can dream bigger than we could dream. We, you know, was important. I mean, the biggest thing that we were able to do, and you know, and Frank can tell you this, biggest thing we were able to do is we were able to say, you cannot block our dreams. Now, we couldn't say what our dreams were, but we could say, you can't block our dreams. You can't tell us what we can't do. We're gonna kick down all these barriers. Those barriers could be life-threatening. Every trip through America for a black person during those times was potentially fatal. It seemed like many people were out to hurt us or even kill us just because we're black. The assumption is at some time it stopped. And that's not the case. It never stopped. That's a continuous thing. That hasn't changed since the beginning of the relationship that exists here between blacks and whites in the United States. It's like a river that keeps flowing, and we don't really see all of it, but at the end of the day, it's something that started back in slavery and continues today. Young black people don't have the Green Book in front of them, but they have it in their head. Well, you're no longer looking at, no Negroes allowed and stuff like that, but you're looking at the same thing which says, these are barriers here, and then people feel that if you cross these barriers, they have a right to kill you.
Tamir was such a energetic kid, At 12 years old, he would actually get up in my arms as big as he was and let me hold him and kiss him and squeeze all on him.
12 years old.
So that day when you got the knock on the door, what happened?
So I was actually coming from the store and putting groceries up, and a knock came at the door. 2 little boys told me that my son was shot by the police, and I was like in denial. I'm like, no, you're not talking about my kids. My kids is at the rec playing, and my oldest son was laying on the couch. He wasn't feeling well, but he ran out right past me. I guess he heard it in a little boy's voice, and he ran out before me, and I'm still trying to get my coat and my shoes on, talking about, my kids is playing. And surely enough, as I walk across the street around a little track where I could see the kids, my son is laying on the ground with 10 police officers surrounding him, and my daughter is screaming in the back of the police car. And they have my other son surrounded, and they put him in the back of the police car. So it was terrible. That's how that day turned out. The police asked me, when they asked me, they told me to calm down or they were gonna put me in the back of the police car. Because I was trying to get to my son. They never let me get to him. They also let me ride in the front seat as a passenger.
Of the police car?
Of the ambulance.
Of the ambulance.
So I never even got a chance to get back, close to my son, to hold his hand, to kiss him and let him know that it was going to be all right. I don't know what they were doing.
So he was in the back of the ambulance and you were in the front?
Yeah, I was in the front like a passenger.
What kind of service were they giving Tamir at the scene?
I don't know, because they were surrounding him.
They were surrounding him. And
I couldn't really see.
What were the officers doing? They were just standing there?
Well, they were just blocking me, not letting me go towards him and telling me to calm down, and I'm telling them you need to let my kids out the car.
Calm down when her son was just shot.
And like I told them, they gave me an ultimatum to stay at the scene of the crime with the other 2 children or to go with Tamir. I choose to go with Tamir, and I had to leave 2 children at the scene of a crime. everybody's seen what happened to my son. You know, they didn't even want to release that tape. My attorney had to threaten them to release the tape, and after that tape was released, it just went worldwide.
What did you see on that tape? Like, what was your reaction to it?
My son was scared when they rolled up. He was scared, and he shrugged his shoulders like this. They tried to say he was reaching for his waistband. He wasn't reaching for no. When you roll up fast like that, you scared him.
Absolutely.
And that's what I see. My son
was just
scared.
like stuck. He was just like,
yeah, like what did I do?
Right.
Yeah, so that's I will never get that vision out of my head. That's devastating. I play it over and over again. Also with the picture of him laying on a gurney, and they would not allow me to touch him because they said he was evidence. So I didn't even get a chance to touch him or none of that.
So no
kiss goodbye,
kiss,
no nothing, no pillow.
A person is evidence.
They said he was evidence, so I couldn't touch him. And I don't really know how that works.
What ultimately happened to Tamir's body?
So I had to get Tamir. Well, I didn't have to. I chose to get him cremated. I don't really think I told anyone that, but I don't want to leave my son in Cleveland when I leave Ohio. So I will be taking him and my mother with me. And I have them in urns in my house.
So to take him everywhere that you go, every stage of the rest of your life.
Yeah, he has to go with me. Yeah, because he just has to go. I wasn't finished raising him, you know. I wasn't finished nourishing him, and America robbed me. Yep, they robbed me.
So when people talk about the American dream, what do you call it?
A nightmare, especially if you're black. Yeah.
Sorry, she just always needs my attention. Oh, God.
Traveling while black means to me that discrimination, segregation is still alive and well. And that even though I don't have to have the green book to guide me to a black person's house, and I can stay in any hotel I want, but just think about the people who have been killed while traveling black. A young man who was involved in the schools in the area where he lived, killed in front of his fiancée and their child, traveling while black. Traveling while black, I'm driving down the highway and the police decide to stop me. Even though I'm an elderly black woman, I could be killed just because I'm black, and don't give them the answer that they want. Traveling while black in America is still happening. And I am really frightened for black men traveling while black. I wonder, when does it end?
So obviously this is very heavy subject matter. A couple things I want to say real quick before we kind of debrief and talk about it. This was made in 2019, so this was made before a lot of the current events and things that are happening right now that have led to the protests that are happening across the country. This, even though I'm seeing it and talking about it, having that video on and may get a copyright claim, it may get blocked even. So if it goes from the first part of the video and suddenly to this part, because I had to cut it all out so that this could even be seen, be aware of that. That may happen. If it's just a claim, and if the video were to ever make any money, it would go obviously to the creators of this documentary, then that's totally fine. I would leave that. But if it completely blocks it so that no one can see it, then I may have to cut out that whole part, and you may have to watch it for yourself to see what I was seeing and talking about here. I feel like there's a lot of sadness and anger and fear and trepidation around the country on every side of this and every perspective that anyone may have. For against, everyone is frustrated or confused or upset or angry, and those are all valid feelings. No matter how someone feels about the subject, having an emotional reaction to it is natural. This is causing a lot of pain in the country. It's a tough subject for a lot of us to approach. A lot of us may have never seen that there is any racism in America. They may have never seen that anyone is treated differently or badly. And because of those things, I know a lot of people don't feel this exists. I have had only a few times, and most of you looking at me out there probably right now would say, why would anyone ever be racist to you? I don't look any different than most people. I have had a few kind of, it's not even racist experiences. I won't go into too many details, but I've just had people say things to me that were kind of different just because it's weird to even say this, but I guess in the summertime, when I'm in the sun more, my skin turns a slightly darker shade than most of the people around me. And I've had just strange comments made to me about that. Not anything derogatory or mean, but I had a guy once tell me that because of my skin color, I can probably handle more spicy food than other people, which was just weird. It was really weird to hear someone talk about my skin color as applying to something about me, because I had never experienced that. And that was really odd. Another lady in a grocery store asked me to help her find certain kind of ethnic food because she said I looked like I was that ethnicity. And I didn't work there or anything. It wasn't necessarily derogatory. It was really strange. The only times I can say I've ever experienced actual hatred or anger towards me because of my race was when I lived in Hawaii. Hawaii is a great place with tons of great people, but there is some real hate towards white people there, because if you look at the history, it wasn't even that long ago that basically their nation was taken and absorbed into another country, and a lot of people were killed and their culture was taken over, and there's a lot of anger about that. And I don't blame people for feeling that way. I understand how upsetting that could be and how that could still hurt people and how they could see me or anyone else there as a symbol of that. So it's very serious. And I can tell you, having been someone who felt like an outsider, it is scary and it is tough. So for those of you who think that nothing like this could ever happen, it could even happen to you in our country, depending on what part of the country you're in. Luckily, I made friends with some really great people there that were very nice to me. And if I was with those people, then other people would be more accepting of me. But me, myself, on my own there, it wasn't always the case. As far as this talk about police go, it's kind of the same problem. There are many great people that are police officers who got into it to help people. I have a friend who was a police officer. I have ex-coworkers that have gone on to become police officers, and I can tell you there are many good police officers, but it only takes a few to make everybody look really bad. And it's part of a system that is truly built to govern people and to control them through, a lot of times through more fear and intimidation than actual help and caring. And through that, the system does need to change, I truly believe. I've only ever had one bad run-in with the police in my life. I need some water. I'm having a hard time here. So hopefully a lot of you out there feel like the police are good guys and they're on your side and they're there to protect you, because many of them are. But I will tell you a bit about an experience I once had with the police that really changed my perspective and why I can understand where people don't feel as safe when the police approach you. So it was when I was younger. I was in college. Me and a friend were just just innocently walking through town one night. And it was pretty late. I mean, it had to be probably close to midnight. It was a college town, so it wasn't unusual for kids to be out walking from place to place late at night, but there wasn't very many people out this night. On our way across town, I remembered saying, hey, no one's going to call me this late. And I had it was back when those bulkier kind of Nokia phones that had like Snake on them. I had my bulky phone in my pocket. I was like, hey, let's stop and I'll just drop my phone off in your truck because no one's gonna call me this late at night. And so we stopped, threw it in his truck. It was the truck that you had to manually lock each door handle. So I locked it, I shut it, and then one time I checked the handle just to make sure it was locked. We continue walking. We're almost to our friend's house, and we're crossing a street that leads right there. And coming down that street is a car. I couldn't identify the car. It had absolutely no lights on. So this was at midnight. The car was flying down this road. It's a residential street really fast. I remember the engine was real loud, and I even joked to my friend, I was like, is this car going to hit us? So we tried to get across the road faster, started running to the other side. And all of a sudden at that point, the spotlights, the brights, the red and blues, everything just comes on all at once. The car comes screeching to a stop right in front of us. And the guy jumps out of the car, hand on his gun, and is screaming and cussing at us to get on the ground. And for me, going into this situation, it probably was less volatile and less dangerous because before this, I had no fear of the police whatsoever. I had always thought they were the ones you call when you're in trouble. They protect you. They serve you. I had always thought that. So in this moment when this happened, I thought to myself, and I even said out loud, are you serious? Like I had no understanding of why this would be happening. But my friend Nathan, who was with me, he dropped to the ground completely face down. And when I saw him doing that, I thought, okay, I better do the same. So he had actually made it across the road. He had dropped onto the lawn and I was still in the road, but I just dropped straight down because I saw him doing it. And then next thing I know, I see some guy is on top of him. He's got his knee square in the middle of his back and I'm being cuffed by the police officer. I don't even know who this other guy is. So this was so confusing. This other guy wasn't dressed like a cop. He was wearing like green cargo shorts and green cargo pants and a black polo. And he's holding my friend down. And then the cop gets over there and cuffs him too. And the cop's still screaming at us, still cussing at us, telling me, and then he gets in my face and he says, we have 3 witnesses saying that they saw you trying to steal from vehicles on this street. And I am blown away, confused what he's talking about. I am just like, what is happening? And I was like, no, this isn't happening. And he keeps yelling and cussing at us both, saying, you did this, you were trying to steal from these vehicles. And then this other guy who still hasn't been identified is standing there saying, you need to tell the truth. You need to admit to this. You need to say what you did. And because I had gone into the situation with no fear of the police, with thinking that they were on my side, I never considered the fact that us arguing back and telling him no could have escalated the situation, or could have got it out of control. But so because of not having that fear, I wasn't going to admit to this. If I had any belief that these guys would kill me if I said no, and that wasn't true, I could see how I would have said, okay, you're right, just take us in. I could totally see doing that. But I didn't, because I knew we didn't do it. I knew that, and I didn't think that they would hurt us necessarily, even though we'd been held down and frisked and touched all over. My poor friend Nathan, who was with me, he had just a little pocket knife. Like, it's real common here in the Pacific Northwest for people to carry a little pocket knife on them. They have their whole life, because if they work on a field or something, you want a tool around. He had that, and when the guy that was with him found it, he pulled it off of him, and the cop said, oh, does he have any other weapons? Because this tiny 2-inch pocket knife counts as a weapon. And when he said that, the other guy, Nathan said, literally felt both hands grab his butt and squeeze his butt. Now, I don't think there was anything sexual or weird going on because of this, but it was, when Nathan recounted this story to me after, I was like, that's extremely weird, just straight up grab you like that. And saying, does he have any other weapons? The situation could have spiraled out of control. Thank goodness it didn't. But it finally got to the point where the cops were yelling, and both Nathan and I had gotten to the point where we understood what was happening. And we had kind of gotten over the initial shock of the moment, and the cop went with both of our IDs to go run our information, and this other guy who had finally identified himself, he was a security guard for the college, which I have no idea if that means you're allowed to shove your knee in someone's back and hold them on the ground so that the cops can cuff them. I don't know if he had any right to do any of what he did, but he'd finally identified. So he kept standing there and pushing us, saying, you need to tell the truth, you need to admit to this. And that was the first time that I ever felt like I could see where people confess to things they haven't done, because how intimidating, how scary they were being. It would have been easy. And if I had thought they would actually kill us, we probably would have said, okay, we did it. Just take us to the station. But we didn't. And at that point, while the cop was running our information, I looked at Nathan and I was like, okay, just shut up. Don't say another word. Let them do whatever they need to do and take us in. And we'll call my dad first thing and see if he can get us an attorney, and they'll sort this out. Because I knew sitting there arguing with them wasn't going to do any good anymore. The cop came back and he was starting to be calmer and a bit nicer at this point. And he said, he admitted, okay, that there was no witness that had seen us grab 3 vehicles, but they had at least seen us check the door handles on 1 vehicle. And that was when Nathan said, was it a red truck? And the cop said, yeah, why does that matter? And Nathan said, that's my truck. And immediately, both the officer and the security guard realized they had fucked up. They both backed down. They uncuffed us. They started telling us, well, you need to be more careful about where you're going at night. And technically, because we didn't put you in the car or read you your rights, this wasn't an arrest. Probably because they didn't want us to sue them for wrongful arrest. They're like, this wasn't an arrest. This was just criminal detainment. You were criminally detained for questioning. And they let us go at that point. So, and Nathan's uncle was a cop up in Washington, not in this town that we were going to college in, but in another town. And so the next morning we called him to talk to him and say, hey, is there anything that we should do about this? This was obviously felt like an abuse of power. This felt targeted. This felt really just wrong. And he said, well, basically, no, the law is on their side. If they said it was criminal detainment, they're allowed to basically do what they did to us to anyone. They're allowed to criminally detain you for questioning if they have any suspicion that you were involved in anything. So apparently that means if the cops want to question you, they're allowed to hold you down, cuff you in the street, put their knee in your back. That to me is a broken system. That tells me that there is too much power being given to people over other people when they don't really have a just cause. Their just cause was they saw me grab a door handle on a truck and check it. They didn't run the plates to figure out whose it was. They didn't try doing that. They treated us this way because of that. And so that kind of changed my view on what police are allowed to do and how the ones who want to abuse the power could easily do it and still be within their rights. That is a system to me that needs change, because if there are good police and they need to be able to do their jobs, but that should mean questioning people in a civilized manner in the right way and not forcing them down in the street and handcuffing them and not even questioning, telling us you did this and you need to admit to it. That's not right. So if you stuck with the video this long, I really appreciate you staying here for this discussion. Whether you're, no matter what side of this or how you feel about it, I hope that you can agree that isn't how people should be treated when they are only being detained and not actually a criminal, someone that's done anything wrong. They saw us check the door handle on their own vehicle. They saw 2 young guys and assumed automatically, well, they must be stealing. And then they made up this accusation that they'd seen us do it to 3 cars when it was only his. And were ready to arrest and charge us with anything they could get us to admit to doing. That's not okay. The only links you'll find in this description are some links to charities if any of you feel compelled to donate. Nat and I have made 1 donation, and these are going to be to people who have been victims of police brutality. I didn't get hurt. Nathan was sore. He said that he had a bad back, and the knee in his back left him sore, but we weren't harmed, I wouldn't say, physically. Emotionally, we were both pretty messed up from that. We were a balance of sad and angry and frustrated and confused. It was just a very tough night. But it's all in the past now for me, and probably not something I will have to deal with consistently throughout my life, but I feel for any of you out there who have to deal with anything like this repeatedly, and especially if it simply has to do with the color of your skin. That is so wrong, and that needs to change. So I'm with you. I guess one last thing I was going to talk about and I didn't mention, although I've only had those few other instances I mentioned of racism. As some of you know, my mom is from Japan. She was born there. We don't know exactly what her ethnic makeup is, because we only know that her mother, who gave her up for adoption, was Japanese. We don't know who her father was, but she's told me the stories of when she was a child and the racism she would encounter. She was adopted and brought back to Florida, and she would have kids at school tell her as a little girl that she had killed their grandfather. They'd say, "You killed my grandpa, you killed my uncle," because of the war with Japan. And this was this tiny little Asian girl. So even though some people may have not seen this direct racism, her telling me that story as a kid affected me and my views. Luckily, we didn't live in Florida, so I kind of cataloged that in my brain as that was just maybe people there, you know. If we lived in that same community, I think that would have really affected me and made me think that people in my community didn't like me because of that. And so when we saw in this, they were talking about incidences where people who tried to travel across the country couldn't stop to go to the bathroom because they weren't allowed in these restaurants or establishments to go to the bathroom. And so I think about, that's 80 years ago. That means these are people's grandparents. They're still alive. My grandma would have been a teenager when this was happening. So even though the grandchildren may not have felt this, your grandparents, a lot of people's grandparents help raise them, especially when their parents have to work. Hearing those stories as a child could affect you. So we think all this stuff is way in the past, and people today shouldn't be held responsible for the sins of the father. And I understand that, but knowing that a lot of kids have probably had to hear stories about these from their grandparents and from their parents of things that happen. If they've had multiple altercations with the police like this, it can really change the way you feel about it. So I hope that everyone out there, I hope if nothing else from all this that's happening, people are thinking and seeing, how can we just treat each other better? Like, this is supposed to be a nation and hopefully a world of loving and helping each other, and that just does not seem to be the perspective in this country right now. I don't know if it's honestly ever been. It's supposed to be that we love each other and that we want to help each other, but it based on our capitalist system, it kind of teaches us it's not really like that. It's more about taking care of yourself, putting yourself first, making money over others, and not caring what happens to the people that you've had to do whatever you've had to do to make money. It's been a sad and tough year, and it feels just heavy. I think a lot of us just feel weighed down all the time. So I want to say to you out there, I do believe that it's going to get better. I fear that it will have to get worse more before it gets better, but I think that anytime we have seen social change in the past, it takes radical action for that to happen. I wish I could believe that things would just change on their own and get better, but I don't know that they can. So thank you so much if you hung out with me for this entire thing. Let me know in the comments how you felt. I know this isn't something we do on the channel a lot, talking this directly about things, especially things that are heavy to a lot of people. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much, and I will see you in another video.